Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? It's a pleasure to be here at the North Carolina Breathe Conference this year. I was able to attend last year virtually, and it's great to be in a room with other folks for a change. I am excited this morning to have a conversation with some members of local communities who've been on the front lines for a number of years now. And what I want to do is make this a conversational discussion among all of us. Each of them will provide some insight into their communities. And we have one person who isn't exactly a frontline member, Dr. Courtney Woods, but there's an important role she plays, and it goes back to what Dr. Ware said this morning. We need academics, we need researchers, we need specialists in all kinds of areas when we're working in these frontline communities. And Dr. Woods has been on the front line with many of these communities for a number of years now, and so she's going to talk a little bit about the work that she's been doing during the course of this conversation. So with that, I want to start with Bonita Green. Bonita is the executive director of the Merrick Moore Community Development Organization in Durham, North Carolina. And she works with a community that is in the condition that they're in because of redlining policies from back even to the 1930s. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to her. I'm going to ask each speaker to spend about 8 minutes with their presentation so that if there are opportunities for some questions that we can have some questions asked at the end. Bonita, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sherry. I appreciate this opportunity to speak with you all today. And I need to share my screen. Okay. I apologize for this little bit of a delay, but I'm not sure that I'm doing this properly. Okay, now I've got it. All right. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, let me just get into the presentation mode. And I'll just go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Benita Green. Hello, everyone. I live in Durham, North Carolina, and I am a community leader in the Merrick Moore community in Durham, North Carolina. And what I want to speak to you today about are the health disparities that come from redlining, that are developed from redlining. So my community sits on the northern east of downtown Durham. And as you can see, this is a map that shows the redline communities within Durham, North Carolina. My community actually sits within this segment, the O2 segment over here. And I'm sure that everybody has heard about redlining and you know what redlining means, but just to give you a quick, brief overview of it, the green communities are considered the safest communities. The red communities are considered to be the riskiest communities. And that's in terms of who can receive a bank loan from these communities. The Black, and these were typically your low-income individuals and your Black communities, or Black and brown people and Indigenous people were placed in these communities intentionally, as these communities, most of them had incinerators in them, so there was air pollution that was going on within those communities, and the air quality was not good. Some of these communities actually had dump sites in them, which meant that the soil quality was not good as well. My particular community, this is the outline. We're a small community, but we are bordered on our west side by 2 highways. We are bordered on our north side by a highway. We're also bordered on our east side by a freight train line that runs through. And the blue area here, light blue area, that's a 30-acre solar farm. There are, this is a steel company that's up, the dark blue that's right in this corner here. And all of this area are junkyards. So you can see we have all sorts of contaminants that surround our community. So that are contaminants that will pollute the air and pollute the water and the soil in the area. This particular, some of the things that come about in communities like mine is that you have a large population of people in that lower income sector. These people develop health risks because of their the air quality, the air particulates and the pollutants that are in the air. And when you kind of look at this area, the brown areas, that's going to show you where those air pollution particulates are the worst. And so, pardon me, that slipped backwards. So you're looking at, you know, the Merrittmore area, which we're doing a test site, but we're in the brown. And also another really large historically Black community and low-income community in Durham is the Bragtown area. And so you see that there are a lot of air particulates or pollutants in there as well. In my particular community, the demographics have changed over time. So we're looking at from 20 to 20, and these numbers are based on the census area, the census. So we don't have the latest census information. However, when you look at this, you see a community that has been and is still predominantly a Black community. However, it is slowly changing. And because of this, you know, what you have in communities like mine, you have communities that have been disinvested in by the city, meaning that your property values, you know, it's when you try to get a loan for your property, it's very difficult to do that. However, your property taxes are continually going up and up and up. And the problem that this causes is, you know, if you've got older homes in the community that have lead pipes or have asbestos in the homes, well, you're not able to get funding to be able to make those corrections and update those homes as you would need to. Therefore, those present health risks for those people who live in those homes. But yet and still, the property taxes are rising, and it puts people in a endangerment of not being able to afford to stay in their homes. The only way that those taxes are taken out of the community and they're being put towards other areas, other higher income or moderate income areas to make improvements there. The taxes within our community kind of vary, and you can see from 2017 to 2019, the changes in the taxes. So we have our taxes, seen our property taxes raise anywhere from 25% up to 100% in property taxes. And like I said, this is without any investment being made back into our community, whether it's capital improvements or just clearing up the air quality. The particulate matter is particularly high as well. And like I said, we think of, a lot of times the medical community speak of health disparities in lower income communities as being hereditary. And so my question is it really hereditary, or is it an environmental concern because of the air that we're breathing in and because of other stresses in our life? Because if you're concerned about not being able to afford to make improvements on your home, if you're stressed out about even being able to maintain your home and not getting forced out by property taxes, those things are going to cause stresses, they're going to cause anxiety, which is going to affect your overall mental health, which can lead to other things such as high blood pressure and heart disease as well. And typically, you know, what we have seen is that most of your lower income communities, which are traditionally Black Hispanic, and Native American are now being colonized. And the only way that improvements are being brought into these communities is because of the colonization that has happened. The demographics are really changing, and it's really affecting the health equity of all of the people that exist in these communities, whereas most of them don't even have the public transportation that they would need to be able to get to a doctor or a health facility. They don't have drugstores, and they also do not have any sort of medical facility located close by. As well, the roads are very narrow roads without sidewalks, making it very difficult for people to even walk to get to a bus stop if there was one close by in the first place. And also, these air toxins that are within the air can cause cancer. So my community in particular has a lot of trees in it. But if we are faced with the noise pollution and the air pollution by all sorts of vehicles that are going around us, like I said, we have 2 highways around us, major highways around us, and then we have a freight train line, as well as a steel company and junkyards and things of that sort within the company, within our community, and that surround our community. Those are things that are going to cause health disparities down the line. And my personal story is that I grew up with asthma, which over the years I developed sarcoidosis, which attacked my lungs. And I had to have a lung transplant because of that. But you find that in most of these communities, you have a lot of people who grew up with asthma. The medical community will tell you that it's hereditary. You also find that in our communities that there are communities like mine, the risk for COVID is a lot higher than in other communities. And it's very difficult to get people to go out to get tested. It's very difficult for people to go out to get the care that they need, because either they don't have the transportation to get there, or they do not have they don't trust basically the system. There's no healthcare facility that is close to them. The practice of redlining really makes it difficult on your lower income communities in many ways.
Bonita, can we sort of start wrapping up your presentation so we can move
Yes,
on?
I'm done.
Thank you. The next presenter is very important on frontline communities. Reverend Jimmy Melvin is from Sampson County, North Carolina, and is the pastor of Mount Zion AMEZ Church outside of Clinton, North Carolina. He has been active in Sampson County with a local organization called the Environmental Justice Community Action Network. And we've come to realize that a lot of the activity in frontline communities is within the church. So we have worked very hard to engage pastors, and we have him on board to tell us his story and how he got involved and how his church got involved in the frontline movement in Sampson County. Reverend Melvin.
Good morning to everyone. Thank you, Sharice. I'm very happy to share that. Our story sounds similar to what was just shared. We're in the midst of that in our hog industry, which has saturated our whole area where we live. And in the particular area where our pastor is in the Sampson-Duplin County line, east of Clinton, 10 miles out. But in the surrounding the church is fields, and there's hog farms in the area. And they had at one point, this is my 6th year being pastor there, not knowing that they had started complaining, and they stopped one organization from spraying in the front field, which is about 50 acres, and to the left, that was in the right toward the east, and then toward the west was a large hog farm operation. You can't see it from the highway there's a big wood lines, but it's a large farm. They were spraying and they complained, so that they stopped spraying, but they began to drill. They had a procedure that they drill the waste in the ground. Unbeknowing, they had started testing, the health department had started testing our water. I wasn't aware of that until when the officer brought it to my attention that we have another inspection coming. And so 2 years ago, we got the announcement that the nitrogen level, lead was so high there, we could no longer use the water to wash babies in, couldn't wash our hands in. We could flush the commodes, but we had and give us a deadline to correct it, or they would shut the church down. Now, we didn't have time to protest because we had to put the signs were put up by the county in the vestibule. So dealing with beginning of COVID and that, we had to immediately make some steps to get that corrected, and finding the companies that would certify that the water was corrected and work with the county. We finally found one that gave a discount, but we ended up costing us $4,000 to go from a shadow well about 18 to 20 feet. We had to go down 225 feet, and that water finally tested with a low enough nitrogen in it that we could use it, and was approved, and the health department approved our plan, so we were back in business. And that was the initial thing that we had joined in with the environmental agency. Sherry came through information and had the opportunity just to share our story. And we did, and a few weeks later, we heard from Smithfield Food Company inquiring. They came by to visit. But our statement was simply that, and they wanted to know why, that they didn't think that they created the problem, but they politely said, being a good neighbor, we would love to compensate the church for the price of the well, which we got a discount, ended up being $3,850 some dollars. And he wanted to have a meeting with me, but I never replied to him. I didn't respond, but simply for the fact that we had solved the problem at the church. And in all fairness, whenever I asked for water, they'd always bring a bottle of water. But my concern with my parishioners around the area within the 2 or 3 mile radius were going back home using the same water. I found at that point. They told me stories of the quality of the water. So I thought it would be hypocritical to allow Smithfield to, at that time, to reward us for correcting our problem, and it still was ongoing. So from that point, we began to get engaged and open our church to help host and be a part of a change and engage in our entire community. And thanks to Sherry's guidance, and my daughter also worked with me to help us with the strategies. And we've seen some great results. And in that, it happened to get our whole community engaged. And just recently, Sherry, on the Monday night, the commissioners voted to apply for a grant of $15 million to address the clean water issue in the Ivanhoe community, which is southeast of us, which is a part of our entire district. So our whole community is now engaged, and we're set to have a meeting in the section where I live, in the Roseburg area, on next Tuesday. We have everybody engaged, and thanks to this, it's gotten a lot of foot soldiers in place and raised the whole awareness. And we even have a race across the racial line. It's predominantly in our areas, but it's we have engaged a lot of people and a lot of to recognize the problem that we have with the air quality, and we're finding out so much information that our government is aware of, but haven't taken the necessary steps to correct health-wise. There's documented cases, the study of the cancer, people that died from cancer, lungs, respiratory problems, the infant deaths. There's also information that, and sometimes in our setting, what we're finding in our setting, my people have been so used to doing it, it becomes second nature. Practicing not washing your white clothes because you couldn't use them. You definitely can't drink that water. But in one of the documentaries, I was astonished when they began to open up and share what they have been dealing with, and just so it's been a great experience. I've always endeavored to be a community pastor, community servant, but it really gave us, my church, a cause to take a stand for and be willing to hold others accountable, because we can't solve the problem if we're a part of the problem. So we reached out to our entire community and networked with any agents that we can to continue to move it forward in raising awareness, and even had the opportunity to speak it with our representatives. But I just recently shared, as I read the update of the Free Black Bacon documentary that we are so engaged in, but we're really gonna need the help of our entire state, our legislators, our senators, everybody, because the money that's being spent in lobbyists, and even our Farm Bureau has invested so much money in legislation to work against even improving the quality of life. And now we have companies coming in to gonna set up the biogas companies to turn it into biogas, and we're in the midst of that now, battling for against permits for that. So we're really in a real issue, a real crisis, and it is in the thinking of the bigger picture. Why would you allow, as a state, this area, and now being in 2000, we were the third largest hog producing state in the county, but why would you allow you to diminish your quality of life, and you being right close to the ocean, to a recreation, and then have one of the most damaging area, and to work against the quality of life for our entire state. So I thank you, Sherry, for just engaging me in it and having the opportunity to continue to work as a community servant and stay engaged when hoping to help our people be aware and conscious of we cannot solve the problem if we're a part of it. And we do have to speak truth to power and hold our officers and our leaders accountable. Our commissioners, we always tell them that this, as I close it, that you might have not been the one that initiated this 20 or 25, 30 years ago, but it falls on your lot. Yes, we've sent kids to college behind this industry. We've built homes. We've had a quality of life. But hindsight's 2020. Now that we know it, we're gonna all have to be engaged and correct the problem. And so it falls on your lot. And we trust you, as you elected by the people and for the people, that you would use every ounce and energy. And we'll believe that this would become the top discussion in the upcoming election, is that clean water and clean air, which our federal government is providing, but getting our local and our state government engaged in doing the right thing. So thank you for this time and an opportunity to share this information.
Thank you, Reverend Melvin. And I heard something tonight that I had not been able to find out what happened at the last county commission meeting, so I'm glad to hear that that's moving forward. I want to take time now to introduce Dr. Courtney Woods. As I said, Dr. Woods is not of a Frontline community, but has been an important partner in a lot of the research that we've been able to do, not just in Sampson County, but across the state. So I'm going to turn it over to her as an academic to talk about the role that academics should play in this work as well.
Thanks, Sherry, and thanks to the organizers of the conference. Elevating this really important topic. I'm going to keep my comments brief. I am a Southerner, so I tend to talk really slowly, so I'm going to try and keep my comments concise to account for that. I think the main takeaways that I want to offer the professionals and scientists in the room is to listen, to find ways to use your science or your professional technical skills to have impact beyond your field, and also find ways to collaborate. So with the first, listening, I'll say that I was trained as an engineer, chemical engineer and toxicologist, and so not at any point during my training did I receive the skills of how to collaborate with communities. I did train in a school of public health, but at no point during that training did I take courses or conduct community engaged work. And it was through working with the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network as a member of their planning committee for several years, and having an opportunity to listen and hear the stories and concerns about communities, as well as my time collaborating with communities like those in Sampson County and other communities across the state. Did I, sort of receive my training in how to collaborate with communities as a scientist. I also want to, in that message about listening, make the point that we need to find ways to both elevate I'll say as a scientist, we often think about, what are the gaps in the science, and we are often really driven by those kinds of questions. And it's important for us to be able to identify the intersection of that with the concerns of the community. We want to do work that's really driven by those concerns, but it's also important for us to make sure that we're advancing science in some way. So being able to listen to communities and do that work in a way that's driven by their concerns while understanding how that fits into gaps within our field, I think is really important. The other piece in terms of thinking about how to be impactful beyond your fields or beyond your professional area often means that, you're not just publishing in your scientific journal, but you're also finding ways to make sure that you're creating community notes, that you're reporting back your data and your findings as soon as you have them. And we've had a bit of a learning process with that and some work that we're doing with residents in Sampson County now around private well testing. Our process has been slower than we'd like, but we do have that as a priority and are trying to figure out ways to make sure that as soon as we know, residents know, and that they also are learning ways to be able to utilize the scientific data along with their personal narratives to be able to make change. That also might mean, figuring out how to consolidate your scientific findings into a policy brief and be able to share that with other decision makers. The last piece I want to offer, this goes for everybody in the room, is to find ways to collaborate. So I think in this highly technological world, highly individualistic society where we are often awarded for our personal, on our personal merits and advances, we forget that we've gotten here as a result of things that other folks have done and support and ways that other folks have supported us. Also, in this very fast-paced world, I'm going to call it Zoom Nation, where we can fill our calendars with all kinds of things all day. There's a lot for us to do, and I think to the extent that we can recognize our strengths and our contributions and make sure that we're offering that, not over-committing, and finding ways to bring other people in who have other areas of expertise that can contribute to, advancing the community's needs. I think that will help save us a little bit. This is certainly a message from me too. So I'm speaking to you all and also speaking to myself that, that I think we should be trying to limit what we're doing and what we're offering to what we can do best. And that often means that we got to pull in other people to provide those other skills and other supports. I'm going to close there and leave the other contributions to the Q&A session.
Thanks, Courtney. And the last presenter is a member of the Lumbee tribe, Alexis. I'm not going to take a lot of time introducing you because we're running over time now, but please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Alexis Rayonna Jones. She, her pronouns. I am currently on Waccamaw Siouan territory here in New Hanover County in Wilmington, North Carolina. I'm an enrolled member of the Lumbee tribe. I am born and raised in Pembroke, Robeson County, on Lumbee territory. And my background is environmental science. I am an Indigenous advocate, former Miss Lumbee, an artist, and I'm 26, so for the past 8 years, basically all my life, I've been an organizer before I knew what organizing was. And here lately, after I speak and I've presented all over, people always ask, what can I do? What can my organization do? What can my company do to help the Indigenous people? And whether that's in North Carolina or wherever that may be in Turtle Island. And my first question is, okay, can you tell me a little bit about the Indigenous people that are in your area? And their eyes get that big. So I always say, I've realized everybody wants to do something, but everybody don't know what to do or who to help and what those communities are facing. So here lately, I've really been educating people simply about the Indigenous people of North Carolina. And right now, that's what I'm going to do. And it's something that I think that is so common, but I've realized a lot of education, there needs to be a lot of education put in place when it comes to indigeneity in North Carolina and that Indigenous identity. So right now what we're going to do is go over, North Carolina tribal and urban communities. And you take the information that you know and overlap it over this map. So right now, we're going to go over the North Carolina tribal and urban communities. North Carolina, up until this year, was the largest tribe east of the Mississippi, had the largest indigenous population east of the Mississippi. New York now is number 1, and now North Carolina is number 2. But people really don't understand that high population that we have right here in our great state of North Carolina. So right here in the green, we have the Coharian, Harnett, and Sampson County. Off to the left in red, we have the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians in Cherokee, Clay, Graham, Jackson, Macon, and Swain counties. Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians there's 3 brands of Cherokee. So before you tell someone that your great-grandmother is Cherokee, be sure to know that there is 3 bands, and it's helpful to know which one. But Eastern Band of Cherokee is the only federally recognized tribe in North Carolina. So we have the Hallawasaponi up to that border of Virginia and Warren and Halifax County. We have Lumbee in Hope, Robeson, Scotland, and Cumberland needs to be highlighted in there as well. We have the Meherrin Nation in Hartford, Northampton, Gates, and Bertie County. We have the Occaneechi Band of Saponi Nation in Alamance, Caswell, and Orange County. We have the Saponi in Pearson. We have the Waccamaw Siouan in Bladen and Columbus. We have urban Indian organizations, the Cumberland County Association for Indian People, Guilford Native American Association up in Greensboro, Metrolina Native American Association out in Charlotte, and we also have the Triangle Native American Association. And then there's also another tribe that is not state recognized, which is the Tuscarora, and that is a battle that is going on right now with the state and the North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs. And when that does happen, I think they will be representing Bertie and Robeson County. And then you have the Lumbee, which is the largest tribe east of the Mississippi. Um, so I really wanted to highlight those tribes in North Carolina. And but just because I have just a short amount of time, I will just go ahead and play. I'll stop the screen share and I'll play a video right quick. And if you ever have any questions I'm a tribal liaison, feel free to reach out to me. And I will end this with a quick video of Indigenous climate solutions. And I had a lot more information, but we're running short on time. So let me play this video for you right quick. And I hope you enjoy it.
Hey, Alexis. I'm so excited to be here with you. Is now still a good time?
Of course, but you're gonna have to follow me around.
No problem. For folks who don't know, could you give us a quick introduction?
I'm Alexis. I'm a model, musician, and a member of the Lumbee tribe. I live just down that way. We're standing in Lumbee territory.
Could you share a highlight from your music career?
Well, I won a gold ticket on a certain TV show in 2019.
Very cool. And a fun fact?
The Lumbee tribe is the largest unrecognized tribe east of the Mississippi, with over 65,000 members.
And what exactly are we doing here today?
We're here for a photo shoot. I'm partnering with a native designer to launch this new sustainable collection.
Sounds like you're pretty involved with the environmental movement. What are your thoughts about tackling climate change?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. As the climate emergency intensifies, we seem to think we can just engineer our way out of it. You know, mainstream solutions like carbon neutral cargo ships, electric vehicles, and solar power. But elected officials promote these tools even as they continue to collaborate with extractive industries in the name of supporting the economy.
That sounds pretty insincere.
Exactly. But it's not just that. Climate change is a cultural issue. Modern lifestyles created it. As such, many Native communities believe that solving the climate crisis doesn't just require a shift in technology, it also requires a shift in cultural perspectives.
So what kind of solution are you suggesting?
The land back movement. By returning indigenous lands to indigenous peoples, colonial governments and corporations will no longer have the power to exploit the homelands of Native communities around the world.
Can you tell me more about that?
Before colonialism, indigenous peoples were taking care of our planet with love and respect. Being in good relationship with the natural world is a part of our culture. It's ingrained in our languages, ceremonies, and ancestral knowledge. Oh, hey, Oscar. Indigenous peoples also value the well-being of future generations. For example, seventh generation stewardship is a concept believed to have originated from the Iroquois, and it encourages us to live and work for the benefit of those 140 years into the future. So let's imagine a world where this land has been reclaimed by its original peoples. The pipelines that devastate our land and poison our water are shut down. We end the construction of all new fossil fuel infrastructure. Not only does this infrastructure perpetuate the climate crisis, but the man camps associated with pipeline construction lead to missing and murdered indigenous women. Violence to our land has a direct correlation to the violence against indigenous women, girls, and our two-spirit relatives. It must stop.
Wow, I had no idea. Go on.
We can restore bison population in the Great Plains, where they play a vital role in maintaining the health of our prairies. We can also preserve other endangered first foods, like salmon, by removing dams from our rivers and planting trees along stream beds to cool the warming waters.
Are any of these efforts already underway?
They are, in addition to many more. Today, over 50 tribes have committed to climate strategies to protect our land, water, and cultures.
Amazing. Now, before we wrap up, any final thoughts?
Yeah, right now, the solutions presented by our policymakers don't get us anywhere close to solving the climate emergency. It's time to take more immediate action. Native communities already have the knowledge and principles we need to solve the climate crisis. We need to implement Indigenous solutions at a much broader scale. By returning stolen land to Native people and empowering Indigenous leadership, we can ensure a better future for generations to come.
Great way to end the panel, and a lot for us to think about. Thank you, and I apologize for letting it run over, but we have a few minutes? Okay. Are there any questions from the audience or anyone online who would like to submit or ask a question from something that they've heard?
Well, thank you very much, Sherry, to you and all the members of the panel. Those were terrific presentations. I have a question for any member of the panel, and that is that in the last 10 years, we've seen a growth in the availability of portable monitoring systems to provide more localized information about air quality and to some extent water. My question is that making a difference in local advocacy because there are now tools for making visible what was formerly invisible?
I'll take that one on real quickly. I know in Sampson County, we have asked for air monitors, and there is a reluctance from state agencies to put air monitors in places that would give us any significant data that we could point to give us many of the answers that we're looking for. So we're still working as a nonprofit, and I didn't disclose, I actually started a nonprofit in Sampson County called the Environmental Justice Community Action Network. And we're working with partners now to try and get funding so that we as an organization can place those air monitors in places and try to start gathering data. Because as many of you can imagine, one of the things that communities don't have is the data. The industry does, and that's who legislators are listening to. And of course, the industry data says there are no problems.
I'd like to address that as well. Here in Durham, we found that the county actually had air monitors that they were not using. And so we're actually working to get those air monitors installed. There are some that we just started putting up in the fall of 2021. But we're working to get more of these air monitors installed, particularly hopefully at schools in the area so that we can have a better and clearer idea. Thank you.
There we go. We also had a question come in online from former Charlotte Mayor Jennifer Roberts, who asks, when the American Public Health Association recognizes the health impacts of climate change and environmental racism, how can doctors continue to tell BIPOC people that their chronic illnesses are hereditary? Is this being taught in our medical schools?
Is there someone with a medical background in the room that could answer that?
Dan Costa, not being a physician, but having some training in clinical medicine and environmental health over the years. Many of the physicians speak from ignorance. It's as simple as that. They don't know. Wayne Cascio, who's at EPA, he's one of the center directors, is a cardiologist. He went to a cardiology meeting of some 250 people and asked, how many of you people, physicians, have heard of PM 2.5? There were about 20 hands that went up. And we know from what's out there and what PM 2.5 does to cardiac health. So.
Thank you for that. Were you standing at the mic with a question as well?
Yeah, I was standing here with a question.
Okay.
And I'll sort of lay this on Courtney Woods, but to anybody. We're sort of stuck with a paradox. We need to get some, I think the ivory towers, the academic institutions can certainly bring a lot to these issues, particularly community health and community science. I reflect back to Steve Wing, the late Steve Wing, who worked with Reach and others. And I know in your this isn't aiming at you, but in your department, which I'm an adjunct
Our
to.
department,
Our
yeah.
department, yes. And in all academic institutions, that kind of research and science is not the pure science. If you want to be promoted, if you want to grow, if you want to get your grants, you need to do this independent, objective science. This community science is by nature not objective. Has so many components, social components, and it's so difficult to do and has to be built on this social consciousness and a relationship. Yet our academic institutions don't reward those individuals. I know from talking to Steve how he fought and fought and fought, and his old department chair said, I'm going to make sure you never get promoted. He achieved so much working with the community. How do we eventually bring this together in some revolutionary way?
Yeah, that's a really great question. It's certainly work that lots of academics are fighting for. One thing I do want to maybe challenge is this idea that the type of sort of physical science that we're doing is objective. So Steve wrote a great article about this to say that, you know, the things that we choose to observe are certainly they're shaped by our perspectives. And so there's while the tools that we may be using are in some ways objective, I think that the types of questions that we ask are absolutely shaped by our experiences and our perspectives. So that's just to push back on that. I do think that universities are trying to figure out ways to change their tenure and promotion processes in recognition that there are more people, more faculty members who want to do community engaged work, that there are students. You're sitting at a table with several students that are working in the EJ clinic with me, that this is really a paradigm shift in the way that we should be thinking about our science. And so I think there are, I know that the School of Public Health at UNC is one that's looking at the tenure and promotion process to find ways to reward this kind of work. It's certainly slow. It's not happening at the pace that it needs to. I think it also just requires us to keep doing this work and to keep elevating qualitative approaches and not hierarchying our hard measurements of contaminants in the water. Like, that is important, and we can't necessarily place that over the narratives and the kinds of information that we get from qualitative work. So we are as much, I think, a contributor to that as our institutions.
Thank you for that. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. I'm sure that there are many other questions that you wanted answered, and hopefully you can contact some of these people individually and get some of those answers, or speak with Courtney, for example. She's going to be here at least for part of the day, and pull her off to the side and ask those questions. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for the panelists for taking the time today to spend with us and talk about their experiences.